Well, good morning, everybody. As we start this new week here in December, it's amazing just to think about two things about the atmosphere. The first one is this near-term pattern. It seems to be just completely stuck. And then at the end of this video, I'm kind of excited to show you some work I've been doing and did quickly this morning about the MJO, something I've wanted to kind of look into for a while. But what's stuck right now? I mean, if you just look at yesterday, okay, we added more snow to the same corridor and through here. Thankfully, we brought much better rains through parts of the southeast. We'll look at that a little more in depth in a few moments. And we've just started another week of Thule fog and Thule low cloud in this area of California, some themes we've been discussing for a while. We can also just see how the atmosphere is wanting to avoid this area with bringing in meaningful flow to revive some of the moisture problems we've seen there as of late. So thinking this all through, I wanted to show you the last 7 days of total accumulated precipitation. And a lot of this, I just wanted to focus down here in the southeast and along the very southern end of the Mississippi River Valley, along the Gulf Coast. This has been an area that was diving very quickly into drought this fall. And this recent, play between a big area of high pressure that came out of the north and another one that came out of kind of the south and east, just, like I said last week, put a really good squeeze in the atmosphere here, producing a front over which we saw plenty of moisture running. So this was desperately needed rainfall in this region. But as we think about the other side of this, who's been cold enough to get some snow, the weekend showed us that we brought in good snows right in through here once again. It's been a very active corridor for snowfall, plus our Great Lakes. But we did add some snow right in through here, going over toward the Mid-Atlantic. We did know that we were going to watch, snow pick up through the Rocky Mountains. So overall, I'm just kind of reviewing this because I'm a bit impressed. I think the models found this and sniffed this out early enough to give us halfway decent look as to where we were going to expect to get some of this snow. Now, as we think about where we are in the season, this is a season-to-date departure from normal maps. So the numbers represent differences from the average. I compute the average from 2008 until last year. So it's those years that are being used to give you the normals. When you look at it, still, we need more moisture, more snow into the Rockies. Same thing for the Cascades, especially here, in the Oregon Cascades. We're going to add a ton to the Washington Cascades soon. When you look down into California, again, look at the Southern Sierra versus the Northern. There's a bit of a split there. But throughout the Midwest, just watch this corridor here. We've got several places like in and around Des Moines, Iowa, 7 to 12 inches above average. So as you get over toward like Chicago, then stretch your way into this part of northern Indiana, getting into Michigan, much higher. And our lake effect snow has been pretty good this year. So overall, there's your corridor, which some of this was in a massive snow hole last year. Just could not, we could get cold air, but we couldn't get the snow to fall into this region. So there it is. That's your December 7th map. Now this morning, just here before 6 a.m., about 5:40 as we're recording this, I wanted to show you the all hazards map because we do have winter storm warnings out for Virginia. We'll take a look at this in a few moments. Winter weather advisories and winter storm watches in through here. And then we got to talk about this wind coming over the mountains into the plains here. This is going to be a significant event that we have to look closely at here. Then you see parts of the Northwest now under flood watches, and we're expecting tremendous amounts of rainfall in that area. And this is the reason why. Just watch here as we go from last night into this morning. This is the upper level water vapor. And so you're seeing just moisture content deep in the atmosphere. It's a good tracer of atmospheric motion. And we're just seeing an extremely energetic, piece of the atmosphere here that's got strong thermal contrast just driving the flow straight into the Pacific Northwest. And that is what we're going to watch. This is the base, the southern edge of a trough, and it is just screaming into the Pacific Northwest. Just looking at it carefully, in fact, this should update. There you go. This is the 12Z WPC forecast, so the most recent one we have looking at total precipitation over the next 7 days alone. Now, the issue is with the flow coming in this direction, the mountains are going to be very effective at producing a rain shadow. And so while there will be some moisture that gets into the Columbia Basin and into eastern Oregon, you can just find your Blue Mountains, your Northern Rockies, the Cascades, the Olympic, the coastal ranges here are what's going to take this on. And because farther to the south, there just isn't flow. It's just not coming into California. This area is pretty dry, but I have some better news for California in the longer term. Now, a lot of this is going to be snow, and you can see how much moisture is expected in parts of Montana, which we've been monitoring how dry some pockets of Montana have been despite some recent snows. If we look at the next 7 days, according to the European model for the Northwest, first of all, epic ski conditions are going to be building here in parts of the Northern Rockies and the coastal ranges here in British Columbia. But look at that. The snowfall totals, we might go off my color bar. That's over 4 feet of snow in parts of the northern Cascades. We're adding quite a bit here to the northern Rockies, which again, we were looking at last week as being an area that's in deficit. But with this is going to come some pretty nasty winds. And if you just have a look at the winds, this is how things are shaping up as we get into the day later today. And very strong onshore winds. And then see how they're coming over the mountains here, just diving into the plains. And those winds are eventually going to become a part of a system that rolls through, again, out of the north and west, just like all the last ones have been doing, straight into this part of the country. If you want to see how strong they're going to be, by midday today, we could be looking at gusts coming off of the Rockies here up to maybe 50, 60 miles an hour, spreading across much of Montana. And as we continue to add time, look at this. That gets you through Wednesday. And let's just take it out here. I'll just park it out there 5 days. So that's by Friday. We're looking at Columbia Basin winds, 40, 50 miles an hour, 60 to 70 coming off the mountains. With this broad area in South Dakota, Nebraska, Wyoming, clipping parts of Colorado where widespread gusts of 50 to 60 plus miles an hour expected is why we've prompted all of those wind warnings in this particular region. So just be prepared for that, this week as we go forward. All right, real quick on the temperatures. This is kind of interesting. There is, we're quite a bit colder across this corridor here this morning, but I'm watching carefully what's going on in North Carolina as we get toward Virginia, and then also here in Montana. And I'm thinking about this specifically for the chances for some snow. So watch this. We already have a system going right through here. This is going to be a very difficult boundary today to find the rain snow line right in through there. That's 8 o'clock this morning. As we play it forward, you start to see snow spreading across the northern counties of North Carolina into Virginia, West Virginia. I'll show you how much in just a few seconds. Behind it, there's enough cold air to spread lighter snow this evening across a broader section of North Carolina. But I mentioned the temperatures in Virginia, it was just in Virginia, in Montana as well. Because as this system comes over on Tuesday, notice how the model is attempting to show this over as rain. Now, clearly the best flow is coming right into this part of Washington in terms of moisture. But we need to see what those temperatures look like in Montana to see if this is going to be rain or not. Now, to be honest with you, it makes a mess when you put rain on top of snow. But you can also help take some of the moisture that's in the snow with this rain and put it back into the soil. So the mess oftentimes makes for better soil moisture conditions. Just something to consider there. Now, I glossed over the system in the middle, which is the one that's got the winter weather advisories and winter storm watches out for it. This is by tonight. You can see the heavier snow moving into Minnesota, into Wisconsin, the UP, and eventually into lower Michigan. And that's just a little clipper, one of several that we've seen come through the flow here. All right, let's get you past Monday into Tuesday again. I do want to be aware of the risk of some ice possibly getting into parts of the Red River Valley of the North. But again, see the temperature contrast here? Very interesting to see leading snow switching to ice and rain. That tells you we're advecting or moving warmer downslope air off the mountains over into North Dakota here. But as we go farther into Tuesday afternoon and evening, the next round of snow comes through. We cool down enough. Look at this. This is 1 o'clock Tuesday afternoon. I'm thinking right here. Getting into Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, and a little band of rain could be moving through parts of Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. What hasn't changed this whole time is this region, just continuing to take the brunt of the flow coming off the Pacific Ocean as we stretch this out there through Tuesday into Wednesday and Thursday as that low moves through the eastern Great Lakes and works its way into the northeast. All right, let's talk snow real quick. Let's look at this model, and let's add it up. Now, I just have to make the same announcement again. Blue is when I get over 4 inches. All right, so we're looking at really good snows here. 3 to 5 inch snowfall event. Keep aware of that. And then there's that corridor where the next 2 clippers go. So that's what we're going to just watch most carefully. All right. I mentioned ice. Let's just go see what the models are saying for ice. And right there is what I want to keep an eye on. See this little corridor getting in the Red River Valley of the North, then over toward the Mississippi? Just have the risk we just need to stay aware of. All right, the pattern. Now, this is still a fascinating pattern to be diagnosing. I think it is dominated by 3 ridges, 1, 2, and 3. And again, that one is part of number 1. We're very ridged out, circumglobal, if that's the right phrase for this. But the troughs in between are incredibly intense, like this one, like the one that's coming up through the Canadian archipelago that links to the one that goes out into the North Atlantic. This is a highly amplified pattern across North America. And I'm curious because we did move. I mean, we've got a deep low that's in Alaska. A deep high, big high that's in Alaska. But what's interesting is the downstream trough left this guy here. Normally, if I see the ridge move to Alaska, I'm like, party is on here. And it's not. It's just a very unique setup. And I've got questions. I mentioned this on Friday. Matt talked about it last week. We just want to know how long it's going to last. So I've been showing you these diagrams, and I want to give you the kind of latest scoop on this. Now note, since we've been talking about this at the end of November, there is that blue area that I kept outlining. See it? So the models, honestly, if you look at that time, that's almost 3 weeks, almost 4 weeks. They got this. This is the big ridge that was on the west coast, still moving there. But this is what is the compelling bit of new evidence leading up to Christmas. Now what it is, look right here, it's a trough in the west. And if that trough shows up, that is your southwest flow signal. It's not going to be a factor until we get to about the solstice. But I think there is something now that will be different later, okay? How's that for a stupid statement from a meteorologist? I'm just seeing this shifting around. So we're deeply ingrained right now in the pattern I just showed you, this one right here. But there are some hints of some change coming, but it's not going to be till we get to the middle or maybe into the third week of the month. So let's have a look at the models, all right? We've did a pretty good job looking at this time frame through Tuesday into Wednesday. Models are pretty well set on that next system coming through the northern plains, upper Midwest. There it spreads its snow toward the northeast. Okay, I think we're 72 hours out. I like the model agreement on this. As we get past 72 hours, look at the next bit of flow coming over the mountains. We're going to watch the placement of this snow. Notice how the Europeans got it way up here in parts of Alberta and Saskatchewan, northeastern Montana. The GFS a bit farther south. And as a result of that, that snow tends to take a different trajectory in the model. See it? With the GFS not as ambitious at bringing the snow through as the European model is this Friday, right in through this corridor. Meanwhile, we're going to watch some snow exit the northeast by late this week. But overall, do you see what the pattern's doing? I'll just keep playing. Like, where are the big storm systems that do that? The big Colorado lows. They're not here. This flow is coming over the top and down. And we're getting chances of getting rain down here in the southeast. But this pattern just avoids a broad area in through. That's the story. Go out and look at the map on ag weather and just diagnose it, look at it daily. I think it's a great combination to see our two flagship models and how they're showing stuff. Don't forget, you can also do the comparison for snowfall. And as I was looking through this, just kind of going across the top, European Artificial Intelligence GFS, and on the bottom I have the 60-hour NAM and then the 7-day NBM. I'm just going to dive into the European just as an example to give us a look at total snow. And that's through Wednesday, Friday. Let's go out a week. That has been such a well-identified corridor of snow. Great Lake effect snow, northeast snow. We're going to watch here, though, in West Virginia. Desperately need the moisture in West Virginia, so I'd love to see some of it. I don't care if it comes down white or wet. We just need to get some of that snow in that area. The issue here is Southwest, California, and the lack of moisture into this region. If you just, again, take another look at probabilities, let's watch this. This is the chance of 3 inches of snow playing through Wednesday. That's through all the day on Wednesday. And now we're going to add Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I'm going to take you out one full week with this. That's basically a 7-day forecast, 3-inch probability. If we step it up to 6 inches, again, we'll watch that corridor here and then the Great Lakes and then West Virginia. All right. If we go up to the big amounts, there's a foot, 18, 24, 36, 48 right there. That's our big spot. Okay. Precipitation-wise, this is not a wet pattern unless you're in the northwest. And what you've got here is the probability over the next week of 1 inch. So again, that northwest flow is only good in summer for bringing in storms. The rest of the year, nope. So that's the probability over 1 inch. Let's just see how big it does get in the northwest. That's 2-inch probability, 4-inch probability, 8-inch. And do we get 15? Yeah, there's a few spots in here that might grab 15. On the drier side of this is the next week. This is only the next week, looking at the probability of staying under 1/10 of an inch. And if we go up to half, there it is. Now watch this. As I add in days 7 through 10, okay, here's day 7 through day 7. This is adding the next 3 days. Did you see how this began to erode? What we're watching for carefully during that time period is this. Here's your ridge next Monday, day 7. And then as you get out there to next Wednesday, which would take us all to day 10, there's a trough coming through in some of the models. We looked at it last week. Matt talked about it. Said the AI probably picked up on it first, although it was super high amplitude, but it was there. And if that trough does come through, it could signal just a system that we have to keep an eye on. Now, how excited are the models about this? Not very, but I do want to point out something important when you look at the new update from the CPC and the European model. I'm going to click on the European model. Remember how I mentioned a while ago? I'll just show it to you real quick. That trough trying to show up here at some point. The European model is starting to see it. Where was it? Right here. And brings a little bit more moisture in Northern California. I think Matt was the first to really see this. That large dry area that had been in the central U.S. is beginning to back off in the week 2 time frame. And that's just as we start to get flow that comes in and drops a trough and moves through. The story of this whole pattern is it's stuck now, but I don't know how it lasts beyond the middle of the month. There is one thing that is persistent in this pattern, but I think the moisture will change once we get past the middle of the month. And I think the biggest change could happen from California to the central United States. All right. The one thing that I think we are going to have just feels like unlimited access to is what we've seen since Thanksgiving. This is just a map looking at the temperatures ranked against history, go back to 1893. And take note, right here in this kind of northeastern part of Arkansas, it has been the coldest such stretch of days, so the 27th through the 7th on record. Go back all the way to 1893. Look at that same time period, coldest on record. And we've just had unlimited access to this cold air. Now watch these temperatures. Cold east, mild west, we're cooler under the Thule fog. Now, as you go to tomorrow, look at this massive warm-up in the plains. But as you know, don't get used to this. December 9th, mid-60s, maybe touching 70. And it's going to go like this. Ready? This is Wednesday, Thursday. These are highs. We're going to drop some of those temperatures back into the 40s, some of them to the 20s. Still warm farther south, but very cold air by Thursday. And then you get into Friday. Look at that Arctic push coming through this area. This is Saturday morning, or Saturdays. These are highs, by the way. So the Quad Cities, 7. Minneapolis, 3. These are high temperatures. Very mild west. This has been very well forecast. So you could have, inside of a week, going from high temperatures in the 70s to high temperatures in the 30s, with minimum temperatures, if you're curious, there we go, in the single digits by next Saturday morning. Holy cow, this is just what the pattern's up to. Now, as we look at all of our kind of model spread, I've got the matrix here. I love this. Euro, GFS, AI. They all show one thing, just a channel right in through here of access to cold air. The most difficult part about this forecast is going to be finding daily where the boundary is going to be. Do you notice this? I mean, we go from Arctic, just true Arctic air coming through here, to mild. You just got to go south. If you want to avoid this, get south as fast as you can or get west. Very, very mild conditions as we look out there at that longer term forecast. So what are all these slides at the end here? Well, I want to ask how long this is going to last. We've made this case and showed many times. In fact, most of us meteorologists are really high on this right now. Our polar vortex is a mess. If you go through the middle of December, there is the chance that it even splits. And the concern is if you put the squeeze in like this and like this, these are what we call sudden stratospheric warming events. And if it aligns itself like this, you could get some cross-polar flow anchored to that really, really cold air that's going to come into this part of North America. But the reality is our polar vortex is not regaining its strength anytime soon. And it's not returning to its position of sitting on the North Pole. Now, some of the models way out there around the solstice like, oh, bring it back. But I don't know that we'll be able to do that. I think it's just a temporary look that it might do that. It may just split again and wobble. I think there's a lot of chance that that's going to continue to occur. But as a result, the longer-term models are doing this with the moisture, or excuse me, the temperatures. Just see the corridor there through December 20th. This gets us up to Christmas. Now this is the week I'm going to watch carefully. In fact, let's get you positioned right on the middle of that week. There it is. That would be, that would be the week from the 21st to the 28th. What I'm going to be watching during this time period is the warm-up that you see here in the model. I don't know if it's going to be exactly like this, but it's a reorientation of the cold air, right? The cold air was like this with the warm air like that. If we reorient it with more of a split like this, that could tell us that the week of Christmas could be very stormy across the United States. But watch, we go right back into what we've seen into early January. See that? And that's where the European model's been kind of stuck on. Precipitation-wise, let's look at a 30-day anomaly, and let's let it end, how about midway through January. And what I'm very curious about is this. Because that, if we get a wetter signal into California in January, this just tells me the jet's dipping farther to the south, and that is what could bring it across the country. But that is your mid-December, mid-January outlook in terms of precipitation by the European model. All right. Now, this is what I wanted to get to. I was curious, we always tell you warm phases of the MJO, cold phases of the MJO if you're across North America, right? And the MJO made this big break over to phase 7 and phase 8, and now it's trying to crash somewhere into here. There was always question, is this going to do this big round the bend here, come through phase 1, 2, or is it going to crash in, come out over here, or come out over there? Who knows? Some of the newest longer range forecasts, I'm bringing it in and bringing it around, meaning it might make another dip into phase 8. And I just got interested in this, so I went and downloaded all of the historical MJO data about an hour ago, and I didn't have time to do all this writing the code myself this morning or plug it into Excel, so I just asked ChatGPT to do this. So I asked the question this morning. I just want to show you my conversation with it. How often is the MJO in phase 8 during December? So it took the spreadsheet of all the data and analyzed all of those days. And it's interesting. It says, on average, 3 days in December, it's in phase 8. But I said the most recent Decembers with phase 8 MJO were 2023. It spent 1 day there. And you can see all of the days in each of these years that it spent time in phase 8. And I was like, well, we have to be careful because you can be in phase 8 but be in null space. See that? So I said, let's filter this. In fact, ChatGPT even suggested the filtering. Let's filter this according to higher amplitude. And it gave me a list of years, and I found this interesting. You can see some familiar years that we've been analyzing, like 2017 to 2018, and the number of days. Now, the point behind showing you this is that this is not very many days. MJO phase 8 is a low-frequency phase according to historical MJO movement. And I think we just need to recognize that. So I started poking around with this, and I looked at these particular years. These are the most recent years with a strong phase 8, and just made a composite map of what the temperatures did in December. And this is why we're telling you, better chances of mild here and access to a lot of cold air. The wild card will be down south. That's going to be the tricky part. But I think this is the corridor that's going to have plenty of cold air. But I kept going with the analysis, and I said, in fact, I actually didn't even ask, but it told me this. It says, what does this mean meteorologically? Well, if you look at this, looking at analogs, you tend to get blocking potential out of this pattern. And the issue here is that it tends to produce that colder air farther to the east, which is what we saw. The classic phase 8 Decembers tend to produce a lot of colder conditions farther to the east. So then I said, what about having runs of phase 8? Because, you look at it, where was that? Here. And we may come back out into phase 8 again. And so you keep looking. So yeah, here's some of the years. Now, a couple of very heavy hitters showed up, like 1989 and 1991, where it went and made 2 runs through phase 8, in early and mid-December. And I'm going to show you that map. Oh, no, that map. You're going, what? Look at the color bar, though. Previous color bar, -3. New color bar goes down to -12 to -15. So to show you that this seems to be the access point for cold air, boy, it's there, milder west. Now, those are 2 extreme years, don't get me wrong, but they show up. So I kept going. Look at this. It's kind of nice. It just offered these key insights. Hey, look for negative NAO and negative EPO. We have both of these right now. The negative NAO, yeah, this is really fascinating. I said, well, what about phase 7 to phase 8 transitions? Because that's what we did. See it? 7, 8, 7, 8. It said, okay, these were the years. 17, and then it grabbed a few other years, but it really wants to hone in on 17, which was the most textbook, as it says here, clean textbook transition to phase 7 and 8. And I was like, all right, well, let's just think about it. First of all, Wait, where did I put that darn thing? Okay, 2000. Did I open this already? Here, let's just do it here. 2017 in December. Sorry, you're going to watch me click a little bit. 2017. Oh, that's 78. We're not there yet. There we go. And this is what we got. Look at that. Now, does 17 in December not look like now? Cold, cold, cold. Look at this. Even mild at times in here. That's fascinating. 17 to 18 is showing up as a very interesting analog to this pattern. But then I said, well, what happened? So, sorry, can you go back here? 1795. See the years? I then said, well, what happened when you went into the next January? So that's 1886. So I just added a year on. And this was what's fascinating. Did it really go over more mild? Now, we don't know if that's going to happen. There's 1,000 things that could affect this. In our key year, 2018, that's the one we're kind of hammering in on. Let's go see what it did. 2018. Let's now make this January. There we go. And yeah, 18 didn't. It just stayed very mild west, and it just unlocked Arctic air here. Okay. So there you go. We're not going to make much of a story out of that grouping of analogs. But 2018 keeps showing up in my head, and I want to do one more thing before I go any farther with it. I asked him to one, give me a summary, which it did. This all makes a ton of sense. Look, central eastern U.S. cold shot snow events in the Midwest East. Man, that's exactly what we've seen. But I said, let's get some more into this. Make me a graphic, and it screwed that up. So I said, no, you screwed it up. Let's do this right, and it did. So Matt and I talk at length about how rare certain MJO phases are. Phase 8 and 1, that's why we said it's rare for the MJO to come sweeping through here, okay? Phase 8 and 1 are your two most rare phases in December. That's all we're looking at is December. Much more common are 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, meaning the MJO often goes way out like this and then comes back over here. See? Or comes down there and out. So it tends to just do this. So what we're seeing is a bit of a rare event. But I keep honing in on 2017 and 18, so have a look at this. In fact, let's do this. What did January through March of 2018 look like for temperatures? Okay, mild south, mild southwest, Arctic access here. So legit winter. What about precip? Let's go do that real fast. Again, this is January through March 2018. Oh, look at that corridor. Holy smokes. Dry. Look at that dryness in the southeast. Dry west. It's got me wondering, like, are we really picking a bad analog? Because by March of 18, our La Nina was still there, but by June it was gone. And this links up well with some of the new forecasts. Notice that the new outlook from the European model, which was released about an hour after I recorded for you on Friday, has a rapid loss of La Nina such that past spring 50% of the ensemble members, or greater than 50%, are in El Nino. It looks something like this. That's now December, January, February. So some similarities to 2018. And then March, April, May. Wow, big time La Nina fading away to El Nino conditions, warm North Pacific. What do the models do with that? Let's go look at precipitation. We'll do on a seasonal. No, let's do this one. Yeah, that's no surprise. It's trying to take April, May, and June and make it super stormy. And here you go. Why? Because if we end up getting really, really warm ocean temperatures in the North Pacific, sorry, that was 2018. Yeah, it gets really stormy in the midsection of the country. This is just, we don't know, okay? But what about closer to now? That's December, January, February. And this is January, February, March. Did you notice? Look at that. That showed up in our 2000. Where did I put that darn thing? There it is. Our January to March 2018 analog. With drier. There's a lot about this pattern that seems to be screaming 17 and 18. Maybe I can get the kids to start saying 17, 18 instead of 6, 7. Yeah, look at this. Okay. That's February, March, April, and then March, April, May. Now, it just is what it is. It's in the models. they're heavily influenced by what just happened. And that's why I explained to you all of this, so you understand that this was the most dominant feature that just went into the model simulation going forward. Okay, so that is the main factor that just went into it. And the most recent time it did that was in 2017 into 18, which we looked at the ocean temperatures. So no wonder it looks like this, because that's exactly how 2017 into 18 looked. Okay, that's all. We can't do anything else with it than that. But we need to look at it. One last thing to look at is South America. And we know that we've been drier here and here. But we made a case that we're going to be watching a low coming off the Andes, getting here. Watch it animate again earlier this week. And here comes that low. Watch right here. And through yesterday, storms began to erupt in this area. We can even see the circulation around the low right here. And if you look at the forecasts, watch the moisture coming through. So we're hitting these dry areas, northern Argentina, getting into southern and central Brazil, with not just one low that curls off to the open ocean, but a second one by the time we get into Friday. And as a result, we look out there over that time frame, and our precipitation anomalies of the next 7 days look something like that. So we've had better access to moisture. It's been drier farther to the south, and now we're seeing the models bring in the moisture the next 7 days, which is going to buy a lot of time, I think, for that region. Okay, that was a lot to get through this morning, but maybe it gets us set off this week on an interesting set of topics to discuss. I'll pick it up again on Wednesday. Matt, I'll talk to you tomorrow. Thanks.